Here we have people falling away. Okay, now one of the things that we don't know in this scene is, are these people who fall away, are these people who break away from this particular dimension of the teaching of Jesus? Or are these people who break away 100% and go back to their Jewish way of life? Okay, and we really don't know that. Okay, so we'll leave that as it is, but people break away from Jesus because of his teaching. So now we're going to explore a couple of other ways in which that happens. Go to John chapter 7, please, verse 43. Actually, verse 40. Jesus is teaching, and in verse 40 it says, when the crowd heard these words, some of the people said, this is really the prophet. Others said, this is the Christ. But some said, is the Christ to come from Galilee? Has not the Scripture said that the Christ is descended from David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was? So there was a division among the people over him. That word division, now we're going to see it as a noun and as a verb, okay? You know how that works, okay? Division or dividing, right? Okay? The word is schism or schism, however you'd like to pronounce it, okay? That's the Greek word that's there. So what we're talking about is that division where it's a splitting apart. We're going to see it again. Have a look, please, this time at chapter 9 of John's Gospel. And we're going to be at verse 13. The man born blind. We'll get this gospel in a couple of Sundays. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now, it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. The Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? There was a division among them. A division among them. Finally, in chapter 10. Begin verse 17. This is the Good Shepherd discourse. I'll come back to it in a minute, but we're going to start at verse 17. For this reason the Father loves me, Jesus says, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. There was again a division among the Jews because of these words. So, if you like, this is a kind of an acting out of what Jesus says in the synoptic Gospels in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where he says, don't think that I've come to bring peace on the earth. I've come to bring division, the sword. Not that that's his intention, that's the effect. Because people are going to make their choice. They're going to see him. They're either going to say yes or no. And he says, from now on, a household is going to be divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3, etc., etc. Okay, so we know that it's the reality, and John's Gospel is demonstrating how and why that's happening. It is. So the acknowledgement of the split is sad. We'll continue in chapter 10, verse 11. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hireling and not a shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hireling. He cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will heed my voice. So there shall be one flock, one shepherd. Okay, it's really a combination of a stating of the reality and the desire for a goal. Okay, so we know the issue of division that had to be pretty intense in this Johannine community. Now we're going to look at this division as it goes on in the letters of John. So that's almost the last books right before Revelation. Have a look at the first letter of John. First letter of John. Up in your Bibles it probably says 1 John or something, okay? Chapter 2, verse 18. Children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that it might be plain that they all are not of us. Okay, you don't get any clearer statement of division than that. And they are regarded, because they left, as the Antichrist. Collectively, lots of Antichrists. What is an Antichrist? Somebody opposed to Christ. How do you get opposed to Christ? According to the first letter of John, you don't confess that Jesus Christ came in the flesh. Okay? It just looked like a human being. It wasn't really a human being. Okay? That's the thrust of what is ultimately going to be known as Gnosticism. I'm simplifying greatly at this point, but that's okay. The idea, which is known as Docetism also, that says that the body of Jesus was kind of phantasmic. It wasn't real. He wasn't a real human being, because God and matter can't be mixed. Can't do that. That was a philosophical principle of those times. Okay, so no. It just looked like a human being was up there. Okay, but he was really, the Spirit. And the first letter of John said, no, if you're not going to believe that Jesus Christ came fully in the flesh, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You're wrong. And they leave. These people leave. So there's a division there. Antichrist, somebody, or a group of people in this case, who oppose the full teaching about Jesus. Okay, in the second letter of John, we see in verse 7 that many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who will not acknowledge the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Such a one is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Remember what we said about the Antichrist in the very beginning, huh? To be diabolical is to cause divisions. So here it is. And finally, the third letter of John. The third letter of John, pretty much throughout the whole thing. I mean, it's so short. Let me just give you the whole thing. The elder, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in health. I know that it is well with your soul, for I greatly rejoiced when some of the brethren arrived and testified to the truth of your life, as indeed you do follow the truth. No greater joy can I have than this, to hear that my children follow the truth. Beloved, it is a loyal thing you do when you render any service to the brethren, especially to strangers, who have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey as befits God's service. For they have set out for his sake and have accepted nothing from the heathen. So we ought to support such men, that we may be fellow workers in truth. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge my authority. So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, prating against me with evil words. And not content with that, he refuses himself to welcome the brethren, and also stops those who want to welcome them, and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. He who does good is of God. He who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. I testify to him too, and you know my testimony is true. I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk together face to face. I can imagine what that conversation is going to be like too. Okay? But you can see how the tensions kind of fill the whole of that community and how sad it is. What are the hopes? Let me highlight them very quickly for you. I've already highlighted one. The prayer of Jesus in the garden in chapter 17. May they be one, so that they will know that you sent me. Number one. Number two, in John chapter 19, the scene of the crucifixion, the garment, the undergarment of Jesus is woven in one piece. Okay? In fact, was that extraordinary? No, it wasn't actually. But is it symbolic here? Yes, it is. Okay? Woven in one piece, it's not going to be divided. The pagans will not divide the garment of Christ. Some of the believers may, but even the heathen will not. And then finally, in John chapter 21, the appendix to John's gospel, you got the miraculous catch a fish, right before you get Peter, do you love me, 3 times. And it says that it was a huge catch of fish, 153 large fish. And one of the suggestions is that that represents one of all of the known species of fish in the world at that time. In other words, there's room in the net for the whole world. And it says, in spite of the large number, the net was not schismed. The net was not torn. So there's the hope. There's the hope. We can. Plenty of room. It's a big church. Okay, now the actual title that I had for this talk is Disunity and Discord in the New Testament and Beyond. And I want to do very, very quickly a beyond. I'm not going to belabor this too much, but by beyond I mean early Christian writings. Okay? And the ones that I want to allude to, the first letter of Clement, written in the 90s, and then the letters of Ignatius of Antioch, written in the early part of the 2nd century, 115 AD maybe, something like that, just to see what are they saying. Clement is in Rome, and he's writing to the Corinthians, okay? And he may well be, he's regarded as the 3rd pope after Peter. More than likely, he's also a member of a kind of a council of elders that is running the church at that time, okay? And he's charged with writing this letter from Rome to Corinth. Okay. I like to look at the language of First Clement, and although I'm not suggesting something necessarily with the Greek vocabulary because I haven't studied it closely enough, the flavor of the language is very, very much like the flavor of the language of the letter to the Hebrews, which is a nice kind of thing, the same kind of sentence structures and images and whatnot. But what are the issues? Well, Clement is writing to the Corinthians, behave yourselves, quit having factions. It seems that one bishop or presbyter or elder, something like that, got illegally thrown out and a new one got elected in his place. And so the church in Rome is trying to negotiate a kind of a reconciliation of that whole situation. Quit having factions. Believe in the resurrection, for heaven's sake. That was another issue that divided the Corinthian church that we didn't talk about in 1 Corinthians in chapter 15. Respect the liturgy. Don't eat and drink and get carried away. Understand what you're doing. And then finally, embrace love. 1 Corinthians 13. So in other words, nothing changed